Moments later, Joe hung up the phone, his heart pounding. Dorothea Williams. I'm going to try out for the Dorothea Williams. Dorothea Williams was one of the greatest living saxophone players, a queen of the New York jazz scene. The chance to play with a musician like her only came around once in a lifetime. Joe made a quick excuse to Libba and dashed for the door. He headed for the subway that would take him to the West Village, where the half note was located. 20 minutes later, Joe sprinted up to a green brick building with a red awning over the doorway. Once inside, he paused to catch his breath. His eyes swept over the black and white photographs lining the stairwell that led down to the club. All of Joe's heroes were there. Duke Ellington, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Ella Fitzgerald, Thelonious Monk, Ornette Coleman, Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, Bill Evans, and so many more. And now it was Joe's turn. At least, he hoped so. There he is, my man! Curly was waiting for Joe at the bottom of the stairs. He was taller and broader than the last time Joe had seen him, and his head was shaved bald, but he had the same sweet, round face he'd had at 13. Hey, Curly, Joe said, shaking his hand. Leon skipping town really put us in a bind, man, Curly told him. I'll bet. Joe tried to look sympathetic, but inwardly, he thanked his lucky stars. If he ever met Leon, he was going to take him out to dinner for giving him this chance. I'm glad you made it, Curly said, leading Joe into the club. As Joe's eyes adjusted to the semi-darkness, he saw Dorothea on stage, warming up on her sax. Silhouetted against the red curtain, she looked as regal as a queen on her throne. But it was the music that stopped Joe in his tracks. The sound coming from her sax was warm and rich enough to drink. He stood there for a moment, dazzled. Hey, Dorothea, said Curly. This is the cat I was telling you about. My old middle school band teacher, Mr. Gardner. Call me Joe, Dorothea. Ms. Williams. It's a pleasure. Wow, this is amazing, Joe gushed. Dorothea lowered her saxophone. She gave Joe a long, appraising look. The silence stretched on awkwardly. To fill it, Curly added, Joe is Ray Gardner's son. So, Dorothea said at last, we're down to middle school band teachers now. Joe glanced helplessly at Curly. Did that mean he was out? Before he'd even played? Get on up here, Teach, Dorothea commanded, rising from her chair. We ain't got all day. Joe sprang onto the stage. He barely had time to take a seat at the piano when Dorothea snapped her fingers. What are we playing? Joe asked. In answer, Dorothea started to play. Curly and the bassist, Miho, a slender woman with a fedora tipped over one eye, joined in without missing a beat. Joe played a few chords, trying to keep up and figure out where they were going. After a few bars, he caught on and pressed the keys harder. Dorothea turned to him and raised an eyebrow, as if to say, It's all you. Show me what you got. Joe took a deep breath. He closed his eyes and began his solo. The half note, Dorothea, and Curly all faded into the background. It was just Joe and the piano. He felt like he was floating on a sea of music. At some point, Joe realized that the room had gone silent. He opened his eyes. Dorothea, Curly, and Miho were all staring at him. Sorry. Joe lifted his hands from the keyboard, feeling his face go hot. I zoned out a little back there. Joe Gardner, Dorothea said. Where have you been? I've been teaching middle school band, he answered. But on weekends You got a suit? Dorothea interrupted. When Joe hesitated, she commanded, Get a suit, Teach. A good suit. Back here tonight. First show's at 9, sound check's at 7. We'll see how you do. Joe grinned, but his insides were doing cartwheels. He'd done it. He was the new pianist for the Dorothea Williams Quartet.